Well, it's time to do business again. This time we have 25 minutes and it's Business Incorporated. Here are the stories we have prepared for you. We look at the trends of mergers and acquisitions in Africa for 2025 and outlook for 2026. African tourism grows as global travels hit another record high. And in Libya, port expansion, about $2.7 billion will be used for it. Welcome to the program. I'm Ini John McQuarrie. We start business from the global space where oil prices fell on Wednesday. Expectations of a build in U.S. crude inventories outweighs a temporary shutdown at two large fields in Kazakhstan and fresh geopolitical tension that's tied to U.S. threats of tariffs over its bid to gain control of Greenland. So we see the numbers. It's still red, just as we had earlier today, but it's a bit calmer at this time. So for Brent, it's down 0.9%, and the price is at $64.37. WTI is also down 0.7% at $59.92 a barrel. Both contracts have closed at about 1.5% higher in the previous session after OPEC Plus producer Kazakhstan halted output at the Tengiz and Korolev oil fields, and that's because of power disruption issues. And there's also strong Chinese economic data that's positive. And the oil output halt at Tengiz, one of the world's largest oil fields, and Korolev is temporary, and downward pressure from an expected rise in U.S. crude inventories, along with geopolitical tensions, will persist, according to analysts, and these are expected to continue to drive prices one way or the other. In metal spills, gold prices surged to a record above $4,800 per ounce as investors are seeking metal as a safe haven following a broad sell-off in the United States assets amid heightened tensions between the U.S. and NATO over Greenland. So look at the numbers this time. And of course, all eyes on Davos as we expect to hear from President Donald Trump. That was supposed to be 2:30 Nigeria time, but I learned there's been a bit of change there. But everyone is glued waiting for what he will say, obviously connected to Greenland. So spot gold, we see, is in the green because investors are running there 2.1%. It hit 4,900 at some point, just retreated a bit, so $4,862.19. US gold is also up 2.2%, $4,869.40. Spot silver green also 0.4%, $94.96 per ounce. Platinum is down 0.5%, that's 0.5%, $2,451.15. Palladium down 0.5% also, $1,856.98. And copper, which hit a new high yesterday, is still surging. A lot of interest on this since December 2025. So for this afternoon, it's almost 1% in the green at $5.86. Away from the markets now, Libya has unveiled plans to expand its Misutara port with $2.7 billion investment, and that's aimed at boosting trade and economic activity. The project is expected to increase cargo capacity and improve port infrastructure, and it's part of the country's broader effort to modernize its maritime facilities and attract foreign investment. Officials say that the expansion would enhance Libya's position as a key trade hub in the Mediterranean, create jobs, support the growth of local industries also. Construction is set to begin later on this year, with completion timelines and financing details to be announced in phases. The move comes as Libya seeks to rebuild its economy and strengthen its strategic port network amid regional competition. And now we take a look at mergers and acquisitions in Africa, of course, beginning with a summary of how it looks like in 2025. Now, we can tell you that records show that in 2025, mergers and acquisition, there were more activities around it, the volume of transactions was more, but the value of those transactions, however, reduced. So in the first 9 months of 2025, we saw that total value was at 6.85%. That's a 6% decline from what it was in 2024. So year on year, there was a decline in the value. Now, the deal volume was at 259 deals across the continent. But SA is still leading, which is why SA has been excluded from that. And when we look at it by regions, geographic leaders, West Africa led by Nigeria. Nigeria had 45 deals of that. North Africa was led by Egypt. They had 43 deals. East Africa, led by Kenya, the most popular names you would say, they had 37 deals, and South Africa remains, even up to now, the most active single market, accounting for 30% of the volume on the continent. So Nigeria, Egypt, Kenya, they still have a whole lot to learn from South Africa, because South Africa alone gathered 30% of this last year. And I think one of the most interesting sectors when it comes to mergers and acquisition is the banking and finance. So in 2025, the region had over $537 million spent on regional expansion. And then the first round in South Africa acquired a 20% stake in UAE-based Optasia for $279 million. Access Bank was very active in the mergers and acquisition space last year. That's in Nigeria. They continued their aggressive expansion, acquiring National Bank of Kenya for $109.6 million. So it was very active, even though we saw a drop in volume compared to the year before. But let's get more explanation on this and understanding of it as we have our guest Chukwuma Christian Udoije, who is a financial expert, joining us for this. Hi Chukwuma, good afternoon and welcome to the program.
Good afternoon. It's a pleasure to be here today. Thank you.
Yeah, so should we be worried? We saw that there was higher volume of transactions when it comes to mergers and acquisition, but the value was lower compared to the previous year.
I think rather than being worried, it's a good sign, because it means there has been a rebound compared to previous years. You need to understand that this year was a bit unique, given the macro movements, including US tariffs and political factors. What has happened is the rebound has started, but at first we are seeing a movement in quantity, and then over time we'll begin to see movement in quality.
So we saw the financial sector was, loud last year, but what other sectors were of interest or had a lot of transactions last year?
Definitely, the finance sector is always one of the loud players, but we have seen movements in AI, we have seen movement in tech, we've seen movements in data, and as usual, there's usually lots of movement when it comes to real infrastructure, energy, and related industries.
And if we were to, go by the activities of 2025, what do you see? Global capital flows, deal appetite, the trend for 2026?
From 2024, there was a lot of dry powder, especially with private equity. We had a lot of private equity players holding so much funds and trying to offload the portfolio that they had. But what happened with 2025 is we expected a lot of movement, but the expectations was that this movement would also come with more numbers in terms of the deals. But the US tariffs kind of threw the market off, and there has been a lot of wait and see. What I'm expecting is that from 2026, we'll probably see a bit more confidence in terms of the way companies challenge M&A deals.
I wonder if we can expect more confidence because President Trump is at it again. I know you've heard of his latest threats, tariff threat for Iran, for 8 European countries, and of course that will obviously connect to African continent.
Definitely, but with African companies, what we have seen is the African market when it comes to finance sectors has always been more robust, because many times this is based on AI backbone, and once the AI systems exist, even if we do not have as much infrastructure to support much more solid manufacturing sectors, business activities can happen in the finance sector. So this is a bit of an outlier. But I think generally, if you look at African markets, especially Nigeria over the last year, we have done pretty well, because many of the major deals involved local players, which is something we need to give ourselves a pat on the back for.
So I guess public policy is in the right direction and should lead us to a better place in 2026. Talking about Nigeria now.
Yes, talking about Nigeria, I mean, I think there have been a lot of, I think I'll summarize the movements we've seen in Nigeria in three parts. We have regulatory impact, like you said, things like recapitalization in the insurance sector, in the banking industry. And then, of course, we have, as usual, this is a global trend, digitalization and fintech movements. And then we have other parts which is more driven by the private sector, which is strategic consolidations. This is where we've seen companies changing their portfolio, and that is the more interesting part. And we've seen lots of movements of funds in that area.
All right, thank you so much, Chukuma Christian Udoije, financial expert, for sharing those thoughts with us.
Thank you very much. Great pleasure.
Well, still staying with Africa, tourism across the continent grew by 8% as global travel reaches record levels. This is according to recent data from the World Tourism Organization. The increase, they say, is driven by rising international arrivals, improved connectivity, and expanding tourism infrastructure across the continent. Countries such as Morocco, South Africa, Kenya, and Egypt, they reported strong gains in visitor numbers, benefiting from targeted marketing campaigns. They also upgraded hotels and new attractions. Analysts say that Africa's tourism sector is becoming an increasingly important contributor to economic growth, job creation, and foreign exchange earnings. The growth comes as global tourism rebounds strongly after years of pandemic-related disruption, highlighting Africa's potential as a major destination for leisure, for business, and adventure. Let's go to the world of AI now, and the conversation we'll be having now. Everybody is depending on AI now. You want to carry out any task, you want to write any literature, and then you go to AI. But there's a question of how do we balance the use of artificial intelligence and still strategy. So we'll be having a conversation this afternoon with Bemisola Hassan. She's a product manager, and we are looking at AI versus bad strategy. Baby Sola, everybody seems to be dependent on AI now. Some people are afraid that our brains might just get lazy. Do you see that anywhere around the horizon where the human brain is not being used enough because everybody's turning to artificial intelligence?
Thank you so much, Ini, for having me. So I would say that this could be an issue, of course, because a lot of people are now very dependent on AI. And instead of treating AI data as hypothesis, they tend to treat it as the truth. And the issue with that is treating AI as the truth. I mean, the data gotten for AI might not necessarily be relevant to your reality, and that can pose as an issue.
And then there's a conversation of AI versus bad strategy. So if you depend so much on AI, do you think you don't need to strategize? Do we have that conversation also taking roots?
I mean, it's very important to know that AI functionality is different from the product leader's functions. In as much as AI are generating these ideas, it is important to validate these ideas and also make decisions that are informed and that shows the reality of the business and users. So I would say that in as much as we're getting recommendations and ideas from these users, it is important that we validate this because after all, we are building for like our customers. And in building for customers, no data set can understand the customers as much as them themselves. So when we are generating these ideas, it is also important that we validate it by, of course, having like customer interviews as well as some of field research.
There you go. I don't think AI can take anybody's job except you are too lazy to build on your skills. I think that concludes that matter. But I mean, it's commonplace now, common knowledge that AI, they're good with automated and repetitive tasks. But when you talk about product management, what aspect do you think is most suited to be left to artificial intelligence?
Oh, okay. I think we're already seeing it now. I mean, with product management, there's been automations of repetitive tasks like the reporting, documentation, and there's been some data analysis as well. So there's been automation of user feedback analysis, customer or competitive research. But we should understand that product leaders are the ones responsible for decision making. And in as much as AI is making this recommendation, AI do not own the consequences. It's still the duty and the responsibility of the product leaders to make informed decisions, as well as being accountable for the outcome of this decision. So say AI generates the ideas, product leaders are the ones in charge of the growth, the user trust, the revenue that these ideas generate.
Yeah, that's very important to note because the consequences will come back to the manager, to the human being, and not the AI. Thank you so much, Bimisola Hassan, product manager, for bringing that to our remembrance because sometimes it seems people just forget and say, oh, AI is available. Just bounce on it. Thank you so much, Bimisola.
Thank you so much for having me.
Let's head to the markets now. We see a sustained positive sentiment at the NGX from early trade today. 0.07% at 166,380.50. For South Africa, it's almost 0.5% in the positive also. 121,102.40. In Egypt, is on the flip side, it's down slightly, 0.04%, at 45,887.04. For Nairobi closed Tuesday, also positive 0.12% there at 193,000.84. In the Middle East, it's mixed for the markets there. Dubai is positive 0.06%. It's 6,379.09. Abu Dhabi is negative, slightly so, 10,194.74. Saudi Arabia comes back up again at 0.31%, 10,946.21. Qatar is also positive 0.01%. Moving over to stock features in the United States, President Trump, of course, leading sentiment, but we say it's positive. I thought the uncertainty of what he would say at Davos would hit the market, but these are the features anyway, so we'll see when trading opens how that will affect markets. So we'll see the Dow positive, the S&P positive, the Nasdaq also positive at this time. Yesterday, they had posted sharp losses at the close of Tuesday's trade because of course, the Greenland tariff threat ahead of that scheduled appearance today. We move over to Asia now and see what's happening with the Asian market. It's negative for China. Nikkei is down 0.43. Kospi is positive 0.49. Hang Seng is positive. If we could see the other markets on the region and see what the market looks like. Shanghai is positive, but India is on the flip side at the close of trade for Asia. Let's see the sentiment that's rubbing off in the European market at this time. President Trump and his speech, obviously, is going to be a major driver. We have Lars joining us. Hey, Lars, good afternoon. So I don't think President Trump has started talking yet, but I know that investors are keeping their ears close to the ground. I wonder how they are reacting to that in the markets.
Well, Ini, yeah, it's good to be with you. Good afternoon. Indeed, the speech hasn't begun, and since there was a technical defect, as a matter of fact, with President Trump's plane, he will also actually arrive delayed in Davos. He has, as far as I know, now already touched ground in Zurich, but he is, as a matter of fact, still on his way to Davos. But you're absolutely right. Markets are expecting his speech, and before that, I found it interesting that you do have some mixed colors on the screen behind you, because here in Europe everything is down in the red again, markets losing more grounds, and of course it's all the same topic here, the whole Greenland issue. More about Davos in a bit, but what I found interesting looking at the market is, of course, that we're still seeing this trend continue, that silver and gold as the traditional safe havens are up, and also actually the euro is going much stronger today as as it has been yesterday. And that is a little bit as investors think that maybe a future trade war or a trade war that we are seeing is likely to start could actually lead to the mass sale of U.S. options, and that would weaken the dollar. So there's a lot of movement out of the dollar right now and into the euro.
Yeah. So talking about the speech we're expecting and the meetings in Davos, do we have an idea and how it's being received back home?
Yes, and generally I can tell you how the mood is there, because while I'm in the studio here, of course, talking to you from Berlin, we do have an entire team in Davos as well. So my colleagues are actually having their finger on the pulse, and what they're saying is that it is all just quite tense. I personally, I can't remember a year, Ini, when such a big story as the ongoing drama now about Greenland has broken out, so well timed for the World Economic Forum. This topic is really taking over everything. As a quick reminder, of course, I mean, you've reported on it a lot. US President Trump having his eyes on Greenland here. And as that is obviously part of Denmark, part of a NATO partner, other NATO partners came to Denmark's support. Then Trump, of course, came up with the idea of levying more tariffs against eight European nations. And the EU, and that is the latest we have seen in real policy, has, of course, acted fast and announced counter tariffs.
So, how united are the leaders in the Union, the European Union, on this issue of the Greenland and the talks and the tariffs?
Well, as a matter of fact, the leaders here in Europe, they are not very united yet. They're not all on one page. Certainly, this, as a matter of fact, French President Macron, who spoke yesterday in Davos, he is taking the hardest line at this point. Not surprisingly, he has been the target of Trump's ire again and again, including yesterday, of course, when he declined President Trump's invitation to be on the so-called peace board for Gaza, and immediately Trump threw another possible tariff at him of 200% on French champagne. Now, like I said, he is definitely going the hardest line and calling for the EU to put in place a so-called trade bazooka, the EU's anti-coercion instrument. That would involve not only higher tariffs on certain US products, it would also involve outright import bans on some products. It would exclude US companies from public contracts, and it would also levy tariffs on US software companies. Now, that would likely do immense damage to the US, as that would, of course, clearly hit their strongest sector. So, as I said, Macron actually going all in. And then you have the other side, Italy's Giorgia Meloni, for example. She is trying to go a bit easier and has pleaded for EU leaders to show restraint and try cooperation. Germany is also not eager to bring out the bazooka quite yet, I should say. So even though there are some international leaders who have demanded a more aggressive course of action, it seems more likely, I guess, at this point that they will try to avoid an even further escalation. But one should, of course, keep in mind, Ini, as we just said, Trump is in Davos now or on his way there. And once he speaks, all bets are off. We will have to really say, what is he saying? What will immediate reactions be? How aggressive will the US president be in Davos? What is he still asking? And how to deal with it then?
Yeah, Lars, it does feel that the world order is about to change, and we are live and watching and talking about it. But as you said, we'll get reactions after President Trump's speech at Davos. Thank you so much, Lars.
Absolutely, Ini.
So let's stop by at the crypto space and see the stories making the headlines. At this time, we see Solana Mobile. They've announced the launch of airdrop of its new SKR token for users of its Sika smartphone and developers building within the Solana ecosystem. This marks a major step in expanding engagement across its mobile and Web3 communities. The airdrop is designed to reward early adopters of the Sika device as well as developers, and that should contribute to applications, tools, and services on the Solana network. And then President Trump again, his media and technology group, they've announced that they will snapshot shareholder records on February 2 to determine eligibility for an upcoming digital token distribution. And investors must hold at least one complete share of DJT stock on that day. So if you thought you had lost your money, when you got on that token, this might be an opportunity for you to make some gains out of it, going by this announcement. And then the first U.S. spot XRP exchange traded fund as an ETF has fallen more than 20% from its post-launch peak, despite strong early institutional demand. According to market observers, the slide reflects broader volatility in the XRP market and sideways price action in the underlying token, which is weighed on sentiment and ETF. And then we have a very red BTC this afternoon. Price has lost 2.76% in 24 hours. So where is this going to end? Well, I don't know. It seems interested are going to the metal market, leaving the crypto market, and of course Bitcoin is the hardest hit. Ethereum has gone less than 3,000. Wow, this is something we're talking about 4,000 late last year, but now it's 2,928.53. XRP red. Solana XRP is less than 2,000. XRP, TRX, Cardano, everything is red today. President Trump holds some power. Let's hear what he has to say later on today at Davos, and I'm sure investors will make up their mind on what way or what decision to make. Well, that's it on Business Incorporated today. Thank you so much for being a part of it. I'm John Mekwa. Do take care.